you see lots of DAOs and decentralized communities fail because they never market tested beforehand.
Crypto is not speculative, right? The technology is way more than most people can imagine.
About the number of people you can reach in a shorter amount of time more efficiently than ever before because everything's on that open database.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Nalikes Podcast. I'm Talha Asif, and in each episode, we bring you insightful conversations with the founders and builders who are shaping the future of Web3. Our goal here is to educate and inspire the founders while showcasing what other successful founders are doing for their projects in the Web3 space. Make sure you watch till the end as you will learn actionable and practical steps that you can apply to your project. Today's guest is Ian Leviness. He is the DAO lead and head of grants at Push Protocol. Thank you so much, Ian, for coming on. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Very happy to be here. I think I can add a lot of value for founders listening.
Amazing. Ian, so, if you might have seen the previous episodes, our goal here is to bring on, experienced people and ask them questions and extract information that can help founders who are building, right? Because in order for this whole space to go forward, we need a lot of founders who will build great products. So in the next 40 to 50 minutes, I'll be asking you questions based on your experience that can, help founders. And I want to make it actionable as possible. So, but before we do that, I want to know who is Ian. So what was Ian doing before he got into Web3? So please tell us.
Yeah, happy to. So I think I kind of have a unique story. I like telling it because it doesn't follow the usual path. But again, it's led me to where I am today. I started as a teacher, more specifically a certified English teacher in all sorts of contexts. I was doing that for a few years. I walked into a random library in the Czech Republic with a friend of mine. I was just looking for a good book to read in this very small English section. I looked down and that book was Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper, which many of you may know and some of you may not know, but in general, it was basically the first popular book on Bitcoin and crypto and where it's all going before it was much beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I read that. I dived into the Bitcoin white paper after that. I went quickly from being a teacher to a writer, of course, first for free. Then that led to regular freelance work. Then that led to being on the ground floor of a pretty well-known exchange today, as well as several other projects. Went across just about every aspect of marketing, branding, and PR at all sorts of different places. Cut my teeth at Serotonin in the early days, working for 40 or 50 different clients across different contexts in total. Early Ukraine DAO, early many other DAOs, building across different contexts of decentralized communities, which led me to where I am today. Ian is a DAO builder. I'm a DAO builder. I'm passionate about spreading the wealth and the knowledge involved and the practical tips involved with why anyone should try building some aspect of a decentralized community and how it can benefit all kinds of founders, for example, across all kinds of different contexts.
Amazing. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about DAO. We'll talk about the product you're working on. But I want to, get in, learn more about you. So you mentioned you were a teacher. Why?
Good question. To put it as simply as possible, because it's true, what drives me in life is helping people above all else. That's how I feel fulfilled. So it's not totally unselfish. Of course, we all have that sort of selfish aspect where we want something, we want to feel good from what we're doing in life. And in that sense, I always felt good knowing I was helping someone. So I started with teaching because it was obvious I could help people through that, and that evolved into crypto, and that's still what fulfills me here, the helping people aspect, whether it's an organization or just an individual.
Yeah, and I think that should be the way. I read this book by Zig Ziglar, See You at the Top, and there was a line that stuck with me. I'm pretty sure, I think you know that line, help others get what they want and you will get what you want. And that's kind of like, when you read it the first time, you're like, how does that work? But I've been there, right? So just like you said, when you help someone without expecting anything in return, good things happen to you. Amazing. So Ian, were you involved in technology before that? So AI or anything before that, or you just focused on teaching English?
No, I was involved in technology. That's a great question. I was in, when I mentioned reading that book, around that time, I was in my master's of science and management. I was reading a lot about AI and emergent trends. I was very passionate about learning practical things related to entrepreneurship. I'd already taken a few classes, certificate classes from like UPenn and a few other good universities. And at the same time, I was in the middle of a certificate class with MIT in blockchain innovation all the way back in like 2016. So if you think it's small now, think about the crypto community at MIT back in 2016. But yeah, always interested in emergent technology. Not a coder, more of, I would call myself not just a marketer or a DAO guy, but I fall more on the ops side if you want me to put me into a box in the traditional startup team.
Amazing, amazing. I believe everyone has their own skill, because if everyone would sit down to code, who would sell? If everyone was selling, who would create the vision? If everyone would create the vision, who would do that? So I believe everyone has some sort of unique, specific knowledge, as Naval Ravikant says it, and everyone brings some sort of value. Amazing. Do you know about Naval Ravikant as well?
Oh yeah, read a lot of what he's done
Okay,
over the
okay,
years, and
okay.
I definitely believe in what you just said. Yep.
Okay, that's amazing. So I'm gonna enjoy this conversation knowing that you know Naval Ravikant, because when I'm having conversation with my friends or anyone I meet in Web3, I have to tell them who is Naval Ravikant, like what has he done, and why. I I learned a lot from him, right? Like he has done really well in startup world, but the philosophy of how to be happy, how to be wealthy, like, that's amazing. Okay, Ian, one thing that I ask all the guests that come on the podcast is, what was that aha moment? Because most of the people that heard about crypto, the first thing like, oh, it's a scam. Because when I started doing that, many people think, oh, what are you doing? And my mother tells her friend that my son builds websites. She does not tell him that he's into crypto or blockchain, right? She oversimplifies like what we do. But so like, what was that aha moment for you? And like, okay, this is too big to ignore. People don't get it. Like, what was that aha moment? You mentioned that you read that book, but can you uh, talk more about like what was the specific thing that you read in that book? You're like, okay, I want to dedicate the next rest of my life to crypto, and what is the advice for founders watching? Because there are a lot of founders that have done really well in Web2. They are just researching. So if someone like that is watching, what would you like to share with them, where they might see something or might think of something that might get them to come into this space, because we do need a lot of smart people to come into this space.
First of all, we do. I couldn't agree more. And in terms of that practical tip, at least for starters, my aha moment was basically when I was reading through that book as a model, and I saw that not just the decentralization, not just the fact that Bitcoin was on a blockchain, or even money that's created without the involvement of an intermediary bank. All of those things were helpful, but they weren't the aha moment. The aha moment was when I realized, putting all of that knowledge together, that we have a new way that we've never used or been able to use before for growing organizations, even without, in a lot of cases, the considerable help from traditional investors and VCs. Just from a bunch of passionate people around the right vision and a bit of capital, we could hyperscale all sorts of organizations just as people, without not just the deep pocketed people that I mentioned, but without many barriers at all. A good example of that in practice, for honing in on what I'm saying, is something like a charitable DAO raising millions of dollars to help people just because they put up a notice on something like Juicebox, which, for those of you who may not know, is just a fundraising website for on-chain things, or something like Gitcoin. These are the things that were the aha moments for me. Gitcoin, quadratic funding, learning about DAOs, even the failure of the first DAO in 2016, 2017, because it wasn't just a failure. It showed us for the first time that we can pool together capital and hyperscale things just as people, without any sort of being too beholden to investors that could hold back our vision, could hold back our execution. So to hone that in even further, the lesson here for me is take as much as you can from these principles of DAOing, or if you'd rather say it that way, because it's also true, building a community on chain, and realize you don't always have to go full chaotic, full decentralization, but each principle you take is a step forward from, for example, a traditional startup structure from before blockchain, from before Bitcoin. In other words, anything you can learn from these different organizations, including Bitcoin and Ethereum as organizations and their models, because they were technically the first DAOs, is a step forward. Anything you can take from there is a step forward in terms of your startup, in terms of how you structure it, in terms of how you scale. And we'll get more into that, but that's I'd call it the foundational principle I'd like to start with.
Makes sense. So if I were to summarize, and correct me if I'm wrong, the thing that made you believe in crypto was the permissionlessness. Like anyone can do anything.
Yes, that's another way of saying it. I was just also putting it into the box of permissionless, let's say, community building, or permissionless, on the other hand, organizational building.
So you're saying that if someone has an idea, they can come in Web3, build a community around it, raise from that community, and build for that community, which in the traditional world does not have. I mean, we have Kickstarter, we have a couple of other platforms, but there isn't like a platform like Web3 where people can actually own a piece of what you're building, right? And that's something that one of the reasons that personally got me into this space. I was watching this talk by Chris Dixon, who leads the crypto fund at A16Z, and he mentioned that in Web2, the value occurred at the center of the network, but with Web3, the value is going back to the edges of the network with tokens and stuff like that. So amazing. All right, cool. And so you found out this book, you started reading about crypto, you found this DAO, you figured out this permissionlessness thing that anyone with an idea can come around, build a community and raise money. And your emphasis was on community, that how you can gather people around a vision and how people are willing to come together and that have that sense of unity. Amazing. What was your next steps? What did you do next after that?
Yeah, next steps was just writing, first of all, more and more and more. Like I kind of said earlier, started for free because I didn't really know anyone.
I have one question before we go ahead. Can you simplify what is a DAO? Like dumb it down so people are watching. Because one thing I like to do is that I like to understand things as a 5-year-old, so I like to dumb it down, because if I can't really explain something to someone, it means I don't really understand. And people really complicate crypto, right? So dumb it down. Like, what is a DAO, and why does it matter? Yeah.
Let's go as basic as possible, because that's very important, like you said. So in the most basic level, a DAO is a group of people who create a vision together. And that vision is powerful enough that group of people keeps scaling and scaling. But also, they have a small amount or some amount of capital. So it's a group of people, let's call it around a shared account of value. You can call it a bank account, you can call it whatever you want, but it's an account with some value in it. It's a vision. You got the account, you got the vision, you got the group of people, and together they grow that into something greater. Could be for profit, could be nonprofit, could be a business, could be not meant to be a business, could be just a club for something. But in the most basic sense, a DAO is putting value on an open database together with a powerful vision that a bunch of people care about. So they want to grow that vision together. In other words, they want to make it happen in the real world, see what it grows into through the work they do together.
That's amazing. But there's one thing I want to cover as well, as that, okay, the things that you mentioned can also be done without crypto or blockchain, right? Why crypto and blockchain? How does it help that group of people? I mean, it can be a company or it can be a community. Why does crypto? Because a lot of people already have communities out there. So if someone of that might be watching, tell them why building a DAO is different than from a normal company or a normal community.
I'll even hone it in on just a couple principles there. And there's a couple of simple reasons why that's true, why crypto is important in this context. First, we already mentioned it a little bit, true ownership. So you need crypto, you can say, to make a community, because you finally have verifiable true ownership. What the heck does that mean, Ian? That means you have, whether it's a token, whether it's an NFT, whether it's something else, you have something on chain that represents your percentage of, let's call it, that community or organization on that open database. And it's true ownership because you can always see it there. It's backed by the math and the security and everything else of the database involved. So it's always there. It's always verifiable. True ownership, number one. Two, endless portability. You're building something. You can go all over the world, transfer things between people all over the world to help that thing grow in mere minutes without any really major intermediaries in the way, slowing down the process. So you got a lot more speed, you have a lot more portability of assets and decision making. So true ownership plus portability. The last one I'd mention for now is pretty simple. You're able to scale in a way that we've never seen before. Why? One example, look at Ethereum, how it happened. They just asked people in the most simplest possible sense, we want this money to grow this new world computer. They had the right way of explaining what that world computer was. They got a bunch of millions of dollars for tokens that didn't really have value yet. But like I said, the vision was powerful enough. Ethereum was similar to that idea of a DAO. The vision was powerful enough that people stuck behind it and it grew into what it is today. If it practically makes sense to people, just like a regular company or a startup, they'll stick behind it. And that's the key. And why do you need crypto there? Because when I'm saying you can scale quicker than ever before, I'm talking about the number of people you can reach in a shorter amount of time more efficiently than ever before, because everything's on that open database that anyone can access anywhere at any time. At least for
Yeah.
starters, these are the core principles for me.
And then one thing that I want to add is decision making, because in a normal community or a normal group of people, the decision making is done by like a few people, the one who started it most. Even though they say it's a community and will listen to everyone, but at the end of the day, they call the shots. But in crypto, anyone who's a part of a community, and that part is either through token, which is fungible, non-fungible, they can do what. So for example, I'm familiar with nouns, like they come together to pool money, and then how that money is spent is decided by the people who actually hold the token, who are part of the community. So everyone has a say. So I think it levels the decision making, and that is something very new. So
This
amazing.
is my
So
favorite part. Just to double down on that, because this is my favorite part. This is why I've stuck around in DAOs. This is why I continue to be in DAOs on the forefront, because of exactly what you just said. We've never, ever had a way like this to truly level the playing field of decision making. There are contexts where people think, we're all making this decision in this venture together. It's usually not true. But on chain, like the same thing we were saying about the open database where you can see who owns what asset, who has what voting power, and all of the related at any time. It's actually true, and it's actually more level.
amazing. So we covered what are DAOs. We also covered why does it matter. Tell me more about like what have you done for DAO. So I think we left on where you started writing about these DAOs. So talk more about what did you do from there to promote the concepts of DAO, and then what ended up you working at Push Protocol, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so like you said, it started with writing. That evolved into greater educational initiatives, such as working on the ground floor at Bitpanda, which became $1 billion company in Austria a few years ago.
Very nice. You
I
worked at
was one of the
Bitpanda?
first. Yeah, I was one of the
Yeah,
first marketers there. So that was one of the
very nice.
steps. And then I was also the 13th employee at Norwegian Block Exchange, which many people may not know, but it's important because it was the first crypto exchange to ever go public in that area of the world.
Really, in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there and I was educating people along the way, and I was getting involved in communities like we all do in crypto on the side, like Bankless and all kinds of other things, even smaller things like that. Learning from all of these DAOs at the same time as doing my full-time work. That evolved into people reading my writing a lot more just in general, which caused someone I consider to be a friend and a mentor and kind of mine evolve along the way in a lot of ways. His name is Everett. He works at Serotonin now, and he helps with Push as well. He found me. He asked me if I wanted to work at Serotonin. I ended up there. That's, for people who don't know, it's been a leading consultancy in the space across not just marketing, but community building and other things for quite some time. Invaluable 2 years. 40, like I said, 40 plus different communities and companies, including DAOs. I'll give a couple examples. One being I helped a community putting homes on the blockchain figure out how to DAOify, meaning in that case, what kind of governance can you give these new homeowners in this new network of homes? That was one thing. Second thing would be I helped a bunch of medical professionals figure out governance and DAOing in the world of developing treatments from rare diseases. This was before DSci was a movement. So now this initiative for developing treatments for rare diseases is getting a lot more steam, and he just raised a Series A. Crazily valuable experiences there, and I'll throw in one more. Then I also worked with one of the leading ZK communities in developing a DAO for researchers and people involved on the forefront of that kind of research. So I just call it a research DAO for zero knowledge stuff, but also that DAO helps determine how their yearly competition for researchers happens. All kinds of different contexts, leading me to the point where I figured out, I'm doing DAOs all the time. Why don't I actually do it full time? So I quit Serotonin amicably. I was looking for my next gig, and that's how I found Push in the shortest possible sense. We can get more into how that happened, but at the core, it happened because I'd been doing DAOs so much, and it had been becoming more and more of my life, that I said I need to go just headlong into this, just like a founder who says, okay, I'm doing this thing on the side, but I need to do my startup full time now.
Amazing. So you were one of those guys that at every gathering would talk about DAOs, because when I was at every gathering, I was talking about this whole blockchain thing. So you were one of those guys?
Yeah,
Very nice.
and they even call me, like many people who I barely know call me the DAO guy and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
But I think, Ian, there's a very good lesson here for founders watching, is that you specialize in one thing, right? You became really good at one thing. And then whenever someone needs help with that, you are their go-to guy. And then if you want to
Yep.
build a product or launch a company, you are the right person for the investors, for the customers, for your co-founders, because you have so much unique, specific knowledge. And that's one.
Exactly. I want to say that to founders because you're right. And it's really important to mention hyper specialize. Exactly. You're right. When you can, and that makes sense, and you're on a path like I was, I hyper specialized in DAOs. You could hyper specialize in something if that also ends up making sense to you. And that could be the best decision you've ever made in your life in terms of, for example, launching your first startup full time in that area of hyper specialization. Yeah, it's definitely a strategy that works for a lot of people. Of course, like you kind of mentioned as well, you have to be on a certain path for that to make sense.
Got it. So do you have any framework for that? One being obsessed with that thing, but do you have a framework on how someone can specialize? I mean, regardless of crypto, right? I mean, there's some
Yeah.
sort of grit or persistence, but is there a general framework that someone can use? And then one thing is that, why did you have so much conviction? Because I know that reason, right? But you were betting on a space that no one knew about, right? So like, what is your framework on get hyper specializing in something, and where did you bring that conviction from, that I want to go all in DAOs?
Well, I'll start with the conviction because that's easy and it helps set the scene. The conviction came even from day one in crypto. For example, reading things like Surveillance Capitalism, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, that book that I would recommend to anyone. It shows you just how broken not just the internet was before crypto, but how broken the business world was before crypto. And when I read that, I just basically connected that to this idea and this framework of true ownership and more equitable leadership on chain. And that's where my really strong conviction came from. Now, in terms of why and how and what we can apply as a framework for hyper specializing in the way I did, it's actually pretty simple. I mentioned part of it and I'll drill down a little bit. Start low and just go across every aspect of that thing as possible. For example, if you're in DeSci as well, if you're in science on the blockchain, start by just attending meetings, attending events, soaking up as much information as you can. That's actually how I started in the space. Taking notes, then writing your own opinions about those things. That grows into, for example, writing and marketing and other jobs. In other words, hyper specialization starts with it's not easy, but this desire and this willingness to continuously grind your way towards something greater. That old adage that the older generations often tell us, and I actually believe it's true. You really do have to work very hard to get to the top, to get to what you want at the end of the day, and you have to do it step by step.
Very amazing. Amazing. So the takeaway here is that first, you need to work really hard, right? There are no free lunches. You can't take a shortcut. So you have to put in the work, you have to put in the hours. Second is that, from what I understood, is that if you pick up one thing, you have to go I think it's called horizontal knowledge, so like learn as much as you
Yes,
can, and
go
then
horizontal exactly first.
amazing. So I hope that is good, because I think without that you don't have really unique value. Because I work with a lot of founders, being developing their products, and when they come to me, they have an idea and they think they'll change the world. And I'm like, okay, what have you done in the past? They don't even know really a lot about their industry. And they're like, people are not putting money into my idea. I'm like, would you invest in yourself? I wouldn't invest in you, because you haven't even spent the time of at least figuring out your industry. Amazing. So
Imagine something outside of crypto as well. This is a great analogy, actually. It's like if someone wants to make a store with a certain kind of product, but they've never worked in any aspect of retail at all, how are you going to trust them to launch a store or more than one store? Exactly.
yeah, because having a vision and having belief is not enough. I think those founders are delusional, because I've had really bad experiences with founders, being working with them. So that's why I'm mentioning this. And whenever I'm on a potential call with a potential client, I'm not even talking about the service. I'm just trying to understand who they are as founders, and hence this is the reason I want to launch this, so I don't have to educate them on those calls. They can just come and watch these episodes. Amazing. So Ian, let's talk more about push protocol. So you were writing about DAOs, then you started working with these companies, and you realized that I want to go all in DAOs. Push protocol might have given you an opportunity. So tell us, how did that happen, and what is push protocol?
So, how it happened, basically, I had been applying to all sorts of jobs, but like we said, I really wanted to be full-time DAO. So, a lot of them didn't make sense because they weren't really that way. Or I'd get through, for example, 3 or 4 interviews even, and I'd figure out, I thought it was that way, but it's not. And then I would back out. So that brings us up to actually ETH Denver this year. It feels like I've been at Push for years, given how much work we've accomplished, but it was this year that I was hired, and it was during ETH Denver. So I was on the ground in Denver saying, I'm going to find something the best way for me to find what I need. This is another tip for founders. If you're feeling like I've tried almost everything else and you're not getting where you need to be in a certain way in crypto, a great strategy is to hyper focus on one event when you're feeling that way. So let's say Token 2049 is coming up in a week when you're feeling that way. ETH Denver is coming up in a month. Whatever the case, my advice would be go to that event and have a bit of a reset. Be on the ground with the builders, hack something, do something like that. That's the best way to reset yourself if you're feeling like, I've spent all my options and I don't know where to go from here. So that's
I
what I
think
did.
you
I did that reset for myself, first of all.
Very nice. And that's how you ended up meeting Push Protocol?
So then I found their job posting on one of those things. I believe it was like cryptocurrencyjobs.co. I sent in a thing, my resume and all that. I'd already known who they were because they had worked and done some work with Serotonin, meaning Serotonin had helped them with marketing in the past as a consultancy. So I had some friends who had worked with Risha and Harsh before, and I asked their opinion. I applied. Risha got back to me, bless her, bless Harsh, in like 3 days, very soon. They gave me the assignment after one interview. It was purposefully vague, very smart on their part. For a DAO builder, they just said, give me basically like a 1, 2, 3 year plan for decentralization of Push, but they didn't give you a lot of specifications on purpose. This is great for a founder type because it gives you a lot of ability to be creative during the interview process, which I did. I did like a 55-point huge Google slide presentation. 24 hours later or so, Harsh called me back and said, that was really brilliant. You're hired.
Very nice. Very nice. And I think that the reason that because people are like, oh, you might got lucky, but I think you had already done your work. You had put in your reps.
But exactly why I said that, because it was grinding again, even during the interview process.
Yeah.
I could have done it anyway. I could have sent, based on their specifications, I could have sent one paragraph as the answer to their interview question. But instead, I did a full scale, like an hour and a half presentation with a lot of work put in.
Yeah. And I think, are you familiar with the 10,000 hours rule? Yeah. So you have put,
yes, and I believe in it. And I believe that's what's gotten me to where I am today, because I've basically done that in 8 years.
Amazing. So Ian, let's talk more about what is push protocol, and talk more about why we need push protocol, because are you familiar with the concept of start with why? Yeah.
Yes, I tell people about that all the
Let's
time, and that's how you start a DAO, by the way. We can get into that another day, but definitely.
Yeah, so Simon Sinek is another really amazing author that I learned a lot from. And then when I learned that concept, my business became bigger, but my overall life became bigger. Like, it's just a simple question of why we are doing it. And then just so recap, the people that are watching is that uh, many people in the world know what they're doing. Some of them know how to do it, but a very few of them know why they're doing it. Like, what is the reason? Because when you ask someone why they're doing it, they're like, I'm trying to make X amount of money, I'm trying to do this, but they don't really have a really big reason to work with. And the companies that don't really have a reason, they don't go long term. So like, but the companies that do have, like Apple and Microsoft, they go on to the companies like Microsoft. So Ian, what is Push Protocol and what is their why?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's start with the why instead of like some people do with the how and all that based on what you said, because I'm going to start with why disciple. The why for Push Protocol.
I'm sorry. I'm loving this because you've read all the books that I've read, so that's
Oh,
amazing.
I have. And I've read that one
Okay.
multiple times. I'm not even fibbing on
Very
that
nice.
one. Basically, Push Protocol's why is to interconnect first the crypto world with better and more seamless communications. We're there because our why is interconnecting the world with what we do. And it starts with the crypto world and goes to the greater world. Now, the how, that gets a bit more technical, but the why also involves because we believe to scale crypto to the masses, you just have to make it way easier than it is today, but also more fun at the same time. So with the fun part, we're supporting a lot more gaming applications, social applications, initiatives to get all sorts of builders into the space. More fun with more different kinds of people and more different kinds of applications represented, more interconnected with push notifications everywhere and applications that are, quote, every chain, which we can get into more.
Amazing. Very nice. Let's talk more about what you are doing at Push Protocol, because from what I see, you are a DAO lead and you're head of grants. So from my understanding, you're responsible for growing their DAO, and then you're head of grants, which means that if someone has an idea to either build on top of Protocol, Push, or leverage Push to build their product, you approve their grant. So, and that, if we were to take out the topics, I think it's community building. I think DAOs are technically a community, if I'm not mistaken, and then grants. So let's talk more about fundraising and community building. Like, share whatever you have learned about community building and fundraising, and then let's. I want practical steps, because in Web3, you have, if you're building a product or a startup, you need to have a community. So share more insights on how. Well, first of all, what is a community? Why do they need to care about building a community, and how they can do it? And then we'll get into grants as well. So maybe we can start with that. Or if you want to say something else, we can go there as well.
No, this is great. I'd like to start that way. What is a community? We kind of already got into that, but I'd like to drill down with the same model because it's true. Community is synonymous to what I said about what is a DAO. What does that mean? That means a community is a group of people around a shared vision that want that vision to happen practically in real life and will do basically whatever they have to do to make that happen. That also means, of course, they're highly engaged. I'll caveat that by saying, I think this is helpful to a lot of founders. When I got to Push Protocol, engagement was lower. So a lot of what I am doing and have been doing at Push DAO and Push Protocol is raising engagement, raising education, raising awareness and authority, and even changing leadership structures. Like we talked about, these new on-chain organizations are led by community members in a lot of ways. But we even voted in new leadership structures to get more engagement. Meaning, for example, on a practical level, sometimes you have to pivot the DAO, and you can only really pivot that with full support through governance. And what that more specifically means in a simpler sense is you can only pivot that effectively through voting as a community on whatever you're proposing. So that gets very interesting because you have to get in there, get into the weeds, figure out what's wrong, figure out how to fix it, put together a proposal, go through several edits with the community, because with the DAO, you have to be way more transparent than ever, not like a private organization where the board can decide almost everything. Not the case here. You have to put it in front of the community, endure whatever they have to say, incorporate that as much as you can, and then put it to a vote and hope that you get the majority. But for me, that's also the beauty of these things.
Got it. So I have a question here. My first question is, I mean, we are discussing this does every because again, this podcast is focused on Web3 founders who are building products. Does every product needs to have a DAO? Again, I'll rephrase my question, because one thing I advise most of the founders is that don't launch a token, because once you launch a token, you attach the sentiment of the community to the charts, so they don't focus on what problem you're solving, they focus on the price of that token. So similarly, I want to ask you, do we need to have a DAO? And the follow-up question on that is expectations, because then instead of you focusing on the vision that you have had, because you as a founder have spent years figuring out something, and then some random reply guy and comes like, do this, and then you have to listen to this. So how would a founder navigate through this? First, do they need a DAO? And then if yes, how often they should listen to the community?
Great questions. This is the kind of stuff I love. This is the kind of stuff I not just do today, but help people with all the time. So we'll get started with, do you need a DAO? No, first of all, not always. It doesn't always make sense, and it doesn't always even fully make sense. There are times when you don't need it at all. There are times when you fully need it, and there are times when you should and can take parts of this idea of a DAO and, sprinkle that onto your startup. Have, for example, voting on certain things like new features, but not voting on like how do the salaries go or something like that. You don't need voting on everything depending on what your startup is. I love DAOs. That may be a hot take, but I'm always truthful. You don't always need a DAO. Secondly, how do you DAO? How do you get started? How do you figure all that out? Number one is really knowing your community. So that's actually a traditional principle from traditional startups, meaning like, for example, before you go out to raise money for a pre-seed or anything like that, you're going out there surveying your potential target market in depth, figuring out all these different aspects through surveys and interviews and related things of what they want, versus what they need, versus where the market hole is. And if all of that makes sense for you to even have your product in the first place. You still do that even if you're thinking of having a DAO. People who don't do that, you see lots of DAOs and decentralized communities fail because they never market tested beforehand. So I'll stop there for a second, but in case you have any thoughts, but I think that's something that's being overlooked in the crypto market, this market testing, this user research. It's not happening enough.
Got it. So we covered what is a community. We covered why it's important to a community. We discussed when a founder is building a Web3 product, do they really need to have a DAO? Then you mentioned no, but there are some cases where you need to have. So I have two questions, just like when someone is launching a token, right? Because I'm no expert in tokenomics, but most of the products that we work with need tokenomics. And then when it comes down,
I have done that, by the way. I didn't mention that, but I have done every aspect of tokenomics except the coding.
Very nice, amazing. So I was in a previous podcast. I was with a guy who's an expert in tokenomics, and it's like the reason that someone launches a token is that first is if they need to raise funds, because that's like one of the ways to do it, right? So raising funds. The second was that if transactions are happening within your ecosystem, it's best to have them in your native token rather than having it for someone else's token. And then it also becomes another source of revenue for the project to keep funding apart from the raising funds. So let's say if someone wants to do that, create a DAO for their product, let's get more into why they should do it. And the second is there a stage to when they should do it, right? Because if a founder has just come up with an idea, right? With just an idea on a piece of paper, should he go ahead and launch a DAO, which means that bring on like 10, 20 other more people before even you have really let the idea cook? Because one thing that I try to ask founders that I bring on the podcast is ideation. Like, how do you pick ideas to work on? And most of them say, don't work on an idea, let it cook, and then later on, get the validation from the market. So the question is there a stage in a founder's journey when they should launch a DAO, or there isn't really a stage you can just do it at any time?
You can, in theory, do it at any time, but there is, let's say, an optimal stage. So you can at any stage, but there's definitely, in my opinion, an optimal stage. Now, that's not at the pure ideation stage. I kind of mentioned this, but to get more detailed, when you get past ideation and you start to build the foundation right around the seed stage, for example, that's the ideal stage. You have the ideation, meaning, for example, if you're trying to build a DAO, you have documents, for example, about your ideal governance system, how you would see the voting and such work out in your mind. You have a couple other things like that, your mission, vision, and values. That's very important to have that already in some draft. But I'll caveat that by saying with a DAO, even if you have a draft, you want the mission, vision, and values to come out from the initial 10 to 100 community members together, not just from you in its final form. So you have those 2 or 3 things. That's the place where you should launch the DAO if you really feel like you can and should be doing this. By can and should be doing this, I mean you've considered every aspect of, for example, in the simplest possible sense, whether your idea, your startup needs to be governed by the community. That's the simplest model to use. Does it really need to be governed by a community? Or is it the type of idea that can still be governed by a small group and do well?
Makes sense. And that's what I was about to ask next. Okay. So now we covered why they should launch it. If they launch it, you've given us a framework on how they should launch it. Now my question is decision making, right? Because as founders, you pivot a lot, right? And you have unique specific knowledge, you have years of experience, and your community member who just got in, they might not have that knowledge, right? And then you're taking some decisions, and then you said, okay, there's some decisions where you can take your opinion from the community, and then there's some things that you just decide. So my question is, then doesn't it ruins the concept of decentralization when you're just choosing what to get people's opinion from? So that's my first question. And then again, what's the right balance on the things that the founder or that the founding members should listen, and then not listen to the uneducated or uninformed part of the community member? Because again, I've been in some communities and they're like people who are like very young, they don't have the experience, they don't have the insights and the vision, like what someone is trying to do, and they just FUD the community. So that's something I want to ask next, but if you can answer these questions.
Great questions again. The easiest way to answer it and the most efficient way, because it's the true thing here, is you shouldn't, for example, first of all, leave everything up to the community without any structure. Even if you have a full DAO, to me, and in my experience, it's always most advisable to have a few defined work streams or, for example, sub DAOs or both. What that means in practice, related to your other questions related to decision making and protecting the potential scale and impact of the venture, is that in these sub DAOs, in these subgroups, you put certain responsibilities in there for the organization. These certain responsibilities, these certain decisions can only be made by those people. And ostensibly, if you play your cards right, if you have the structures right, if you have the right application process, for example, yes, that could be a hot take, but I do think DAOs should have application processes. Then only the right experience will be making those decisions. In other words, only the people with the right background will be making those decisions. So you'll still have a DAO, you'll still have the community voting on things, but the people with the most decision-making power, executing on the deliverables, doing the real work, are the people with the right backgrounds. So you can balance in practice. We are even doing that right now at PushDAO. Experience with really allowing the community to vote and have a say on things.
Very nice, amazing. My next question is fork and conflicts. Basically, when you do a DAO, or I mean, if you do anything, right? If in one household, when you have 3-4 people, you never get them to agree on one thing. That's so. In this situation, when you do start a DAO, there's a possibility that there can be two sides, and one is they want to do something, and someone like they're okay, we'll just go fork. And then this is something that is very easy to do in crypto, right? In a traditional venture, you have to go through lawsuits, you have to go through that whole process. But in crypto, it's like I'll just fork it, right, and we just move it there. So share, like, is this a good thing, right, or is this a bad thing? Because from what I see is that it's one in good way where both sides can win, right? But I see in a bad way that it stops the growth. Like if two people are going together than working together, and then it ruins the whole purpose. That like how are we unifying the decision making? So can you talk more about this? Because it's something I'm personally curious about. Because when just this last point is when Ethereum Classic fork happened, like, that was very new to me. Like, why are they doing that? Yeah.
No, forks fascinate me. They always have. I do believe it's a net good thing. Of course, there are, as with anything, negative aspects of it, like you were saying, but it's a net good thing that people can always dissent in an easy way from things like that, in an easier way than ever from things in our beautiful wild space. However, in terms of practically handling that at a DAO level, one way you can do it when you're a founder and you're just getting started and you've decided to DAO is similar to what we did when we pivoted Push DAO. At first, before I was here, it was kind of low engagement. There wasn't too much of a formal governance structure. It was just kind of like anyone can propose anything. And like the only governing part was mainly that you had to have a certain amount of votes, a quorum, so to speak, for something to pass and become a rule. So that's good. But there are bad sides of that, like we've been mentioning, like the chaos ruling or something just not making sense and getting passed just because anyone can pass it. So when you have a fragile startup in its earliest possible stage, one option is to elect via the formal voting process. So that's the hardest part. Get one vote through that gets the quorum, that elects a council or something like that. Call it delegates, call it council, call it Congress, call it whatever you want. But it's a smaller group of people that are allocated, for example, in that vote, most of the voting power. They are delegated by the community to vote for the community on everything. The community can still vote, but those delegates also hold a big part of the voting power. That happening that way, that being structured that way, because hopefully you've done it that way, the delegates have the right backgrounds to lead the organization in the direction that the founder's vision aims for it to be led. So then you have that new delegate structure and an extra level of protection from all the forks and potential chaos, because you know they're aligned with the vision and the way the founding team wants to see the startup grow with the community. So this is just one of many options. I'm mentioning it also specifically because it's what we did at the stage we were at with the DAO. We're on a very early stage of decentralization, not of Push itself, but of the decentralization of Push. And we believe in what is commonly called progressive decentralization, which means having an intentional step-by-step plan rather than just kind of pushing it all at once. This is one step we've taken. There are 3 out of 4 delegates that are purely from the community, and the other one is me. So it also can't be on the other side. There's another level of protection. Can't be argued that the foundation's making all the decisions, because that's just not true. 3 out of 4 are not from the foundation.
Got it. Makes sense. So to summarize that about forks is, yes, it's a good mechanism, and if you have the right structure in place, so just like where people like you come in, where they can advise founders that build the structure right, and then we can reduce the chances of conflict. Amazing. Before we wrap up the concept of community and DAOs, there's one thing is I think you touched on early on briefly, is that because now we discussed from the perspective of the founders that have the vision, that are building the product. Let's talk more about the followers, the customers, right? How is it advantageous for them to become a part of the community, and why they should care, right? Because we will have a lot of people that necessarily don't want to become founders. They're just investors, or they're just users of products, right? Can you talk about DAOs from their perspective? How does it help them, right? And then there's like, and the second thing I want to talk about is, in majority of the DAO, you can get in as long as you have the capital. Or in some DAOs, there is an application process, but majority of, from what I have seen, is like you can get in as long as you are early or you have the capital. So then that's the question for founders: should they have some sort of application process, or should they gate it that only a certain type of people can get involved in the community? So can you talk about these 2 things?
Yes, of course. I'm very passionate about those 2 things, actually. First of all, it's not always the case to clarify that you need an application process or a super formal structure on the earliest days. That most directly, to be practical, depends on not just the vision of your organization, startup or otherwise, but in the area that you're targeting. For example, for just one practical example on that, for now, in DeSci, it can become a lot more important that you have only a certain kind of people in it in the beginning. For example, if you're literally developing medicines between two groups of people, you want only the people who know how to do that to be involved in the beginning, plus maybe just investors. So yeah, there are certain contexts where that's more and certain contexts where that's less
Makes sense.
important. Now, digging into the rest of what you said, I'd like to just simplify it even further. First of all, when you're dealing with any sort of DAO like this, any sort of DAO like this, um, start, and I've mentioned this before, but what you said makes me want to drill down even further for founders who may be listening and will be listening. Start with what needs to be determined by the community and what doesn't. It's radical for me to say that being in crypto, but it's practical and it's true. You don't always want to just not have rules. You need to have some rules from the beginning, because people are people and they like to have some sort of structure to follow, even if it is a DAO. The best way to do that is to decide all of those structures and rules together. Does that mean you have to create them together or always have people with, on the other hand, with the right background creating them alone? No, it's a balance. For example, the work stream creates a draft and then shows it to the community. That draft becomes proposal and then goes to a vote. All I'm saying with all of this is, even related to what you were just saying, governance rules. And if you have any question about, is my DAO working? The answer is often, it needs to be more transparent. Not even that you need to do something radical to change things, but you probably just need to be more transparent and more out there with the community, more on the ground, more boots on the ground. I want to say that same principle. I want to pause there for a second to see your thoughts, but that's something that you reminded me of.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing because um, I've been a part of a lot of projects, and I mean, being a builder because we do product development, I've seen that founders take reckless decisions just because of the pressure of the community. And that is something very foreign to me because I have been a founder even before in Web3, and I did what I thought was right. I just I had a conviction, I had the knowledge, I got market validation, and I just go all in. I don't want someone who has never put in the work to give me opinions on what to do. Right? I don't want to listen to them. That's the kind of person I am naturally. And then when we got into crypto, we saw like really good founders, like brilliant minds with the vision they had, but they just lost it just because they were listening to the people who not even deserve that. So now this is something that you give me a really, no, when I say deserve it, it's not means that the status, it's just that they don't have the insights and knowledge that you have, right? They don't have the vision, and they don't have that patience because things take time, right? In crypto, people want things to be like overnight, and I think these meme coins or these coins that go to the moon really fast have changed the mindset of the public that is crypto, because crypto is not speculative, right? The technology is way more than most people can imagine, but that's another conversation. So being
No,
working
you're
with
right,
these
though.
founders, yeah, working with these founders, I realized that so much potential goes to waste just in listening to the people that they shouldn't listen to. But what you've said is that since they started, like, okay, this is a decentralized project, right? We will have decentralized, but there are certain things that we will make decisions on, and then there are certain things that we'll take your opinion on. And I think if a lot of founders could have implemented that, right, rather than just being, uh, hiding it, because some people do hide, right? And one comment is like use of funds, how they're using the funds. So I think if they can make it clear that these are the things we'll decide and these are the things you decide, they can solve a lot of problems. Because I have a really big case study. I don't want to say the name, but these guys were really smart people. They raised a lot of money, but they ended up doing nothing because they had a vision where, and I believed in that vision, where it was basically an NFT project where they could have taken the IP and become like pudgy penguins. They had the potential to do that, but just because of community members who were anonymous, right? And they were just they. And again, it not only did affect the project, but it really did affect the mental health of the founders as well. So it's like that kind of pressure on founders. Uh,
Exactly. No, I'd like to
yeah,
say that to founders because this is such a good point you've made. The practical tip here, the main practical tip is when you're encountering a lot of that and you're seeing resistance like that from anonymous community members or even known community members, and you're like, what do I do? And you're feeling a lot of that stress. It's a function of not enough structure. What do I mean more specifically? I mean, if you're encountering a lot of that, you should have more rules. You should have more guidelines. DAOs. You should have more things like that generated by the community. That should be your response in most cases. You should say, for example, if you're getting a lot of resistance to participation in certain events by the DAO, you should say, we've heard you, we've heard your feedback. We've been developing these event guidelines for what we participate in and why, and how that relates to the greater vision, for example, of push DAO and push protocol. Why does that matter practically? Here's a guide for everyone. Once that guide goes through a vote, that's how DAOs work. People who understand DAOs, who are participating, who want to participate, even if they're negative most of the time, once they see that vote go through, even they know, well, that's the rule now because it went through governance and everyone voted on it.
Yeah, I think crypto has done one thing really good, which is, figuring out how to trust someone on the internet. But I think we still need to figure out the decision-making thing, right? How a lot of good people can come together, because they can cooperate, right, with blockchain. But when they have ideas and opinions, and it's like so that's a problem for someone to work on. Amazing. So
I
before
would
we
say this is important, real quick, if you don't mind, because it's really important
Sure.
for founders to hear as well. Such a great point you made, and it reminds me, study as much as you can about organizational structuring, from practical examples, whether it's like Reddit or Facebook or something else, to something just full crypto, when you're founding something like a DAO. Before you do that, study organizational structuring and organizational psych as much as possible. That will help you a ton. And also, like you mentioned, let's circle back to the beginning of our talk here. Study things like start with why. Invaluable. Helps you understand people on an even deeper level, because when you understand just people as people and how people most basically react to things, that's how you're a super effective DAO or just crypto founder. You got to be a people person on one end. Yes, some people are like, I'm not really a people person, I'm a coder or something. Everybody can understand people better, and every effort you make in that respect is only a value add for your venture.
Because at the very core, from what I've learned, we all are same, regardless of wherever we are based, wherever we come from. We have the same desires, we have the same fears, we have the same aspirations. That is something that I learned recently, but that has helped me do a lot, right? Because for an example, with my employees, so I have like 15 people working for me, and I realize is that if I was in their position, what kind of environment would I want? What kind of compensation would I want? What kind of acknowledgement I would want? And me and my co-founder did a few more things, and then we had results. So just do unto others as you want to be done to yourself. That's good. Okay, amazing. So before we wrap up the talk about DAOs, I want you to give like a takeaway, because then I'll move to fundraising and grants. Why should founders care about DAO? Just like summary, because TLDR, because again, there were a lot of good things that we covered, but because I believe in summary, right? Because again, just like you were a teacher, my mother was a teacher, and so I was raised by her, and I started my career as teaching as well. So I used to, my first venture that I did was ghostwriting, and basically I saw that the kids in my university were rich and lazy, and I was good at research and writing. So I figured out to make money with that way. But I also used to teach people, and one thing I was like, and that is why, like, I really like to dumb down the concept, because most of the teachers that I have had for my life were talking about things that they never understood and they never applied, right? People would be teaching about business, but they haven't started a business. They would be teaching about building apps, but they haven't built an app. So when I started teaching, I was like, I'm only going to teach the stuff that I really know well, right? So that's why this thing in me is that I want to summarize everything. I want to make it actionable. I want to dumb it down. So the whole discussion that we have for why should a founder care about a DAO, this TLDR.
Yep. Just TLDR right here, right now. Why should a founder care about a DAO? Because the world is trending not towards minimum viable product anymore being the most important thing for a startup founder at first, but towards minimum viable community being most important. DAO equals minimum viable community. That equals the most powerful thing at first is the vision and the people who deeply care about it, who care about it so much it has to be a part of their life. And that's how you hyperscale now. You have those people. It can be 10, 50, 100 more, but those people and you together, new hyperscaling paradigm.
Is that a term you coined, MVC, minimum viable community?
No, I won't take credit for that because I love the guy who coined it. if you haven't seen that podcast, look up Alexis Ohanian from Reddit and his theory of minimum viable community. To anyone who's listening, it comes from Alexis Ohanian, most popularized most recently by him a few years ago.
Amazing. I'll check that out. Uh, Amazing. You mentioned something, and that made me think is there's this guy called Greg something, but basically he's moving people from, you know him,
Yeah, I know him a little bit because he works a lot with Sahil Bloom, and I took like a thing with Sahil, and like I've talked to
Oh,
Sahil before.
amazing,
Greg
amazing.
Eisenberg, yeah.
I think our search history is the same. Cool. So that guy talks about that. Let's keep crypto aside, right? Where people are building venture-backed startups. It's like they have these high valuations and these, from the outside it looks like they're doing amazing, but at the inside, the founders are not well, or they're not in a good state. So instead of having these venture-backed companies where the valuation is really high, why not go for community based the product where you build a community around your product, and then you get the users, and you scale from there, right? But they don't add the concept of crypto. But I was like, if I get a chance to talk to that guy and give him, or you can do that 101 on crypto. If those things come together, instead of focusing on venture back product, you focus on, like you said, MVC, like build a product that like, and build a community around it. I mean, that's how we can have the next big startups coming out. Because but one thing I've learned is that I've made a decision is that I will never raise to build a product, because that's not I mean, I can change, I have like strong opinions loosely held. I might do that, but why raise some money from someone when there are other ways you can build a product? I mean, that's a whole separate discussion. But my point was that the idea came from MVC, right? There's a new model of business which is becoming more and more popular these days. Is that just build an idea, start getting people around it, and solve their problem. But I think crypto makes it even better with the trust thing.
I couldn't have said it better myself, by the way. That's what I was talking about with MVC. Exactly. You put the people around the vision first. It's a more general vision, like helping people who are experiencing rare diseases win. So then the outcome becomes having better treatments for those diseases. But you figure out what those treatments are together with those stakeholders instead of doing
Amazing.
it beforehand.
Amazing. Lots of insights for founders. Amazing. So I want to spend a few minutes on grants, right? Because you're ahead of grants. So my first question is, the people that are watching, how can they get a grant from you? I'm just joking.
Super easy. Two quick ways. First, I'm extremely open, as you know, many founders or people who have been in an industry for a long time are. DM me on Twitter, DM me on Telegram, for example, both of the same handle, expat crypto 3, expat crypto 3. Third way, we have a Charmverse for people who don't know what that is. It's like Notion for crypto. It has a few on-chain and richer features, but it comes out like a Notion, just with a bit of a different spin. So we have Push DAO Charmverse, Push DAO Charmverse, and we'll get those links out there. But those are the three main ways. And above all, we're very open. So we're looking for people who are pushing the boundaries in terms of what the future of consumer apps are. That can be gaming, that can be finance, that can be social, that can be anything. And we're looking for more diverse founders, whether that's gender, whether that's where you live in the world, whether that's just like your overall background. If that's you, that's another category of person we're looking for. And then I'll just mention one more for now. We're hyper focusing on doubling down on that consumer aspect. We're hyper focusing on the future of social and people pushing boundaries in social and communications, because obviously we're communications. But yeah, in
Amazing.
general, TLDR, you can reach me super easily, and my team as well are super easily reachable. Team meaning the DAO Council, who we didn't really say that yet, but our grants program is also fully DAOified, run by the community, and there's like 3 or 4 reviewers doing everything, all from the community except for me.
Amazing. So I'll add all these links in the description, but I think that was a joke, but you really answered it, so I don't have to ask it again. So I was asking it as a joke. Amazing. So Ian, one thing that I want to ask is, again, I want to make it actionable, right? I want people to get something out of this podcast. I work with a lot of founders, and I myself was in a position before I figured out sales, was that fundraising is a challenge, right? And there are a lot of people struggling right now. So one of these is either they can go raise from VCs, or they can work with companies like you that have grants. So talk to me about, what do you see in a founder or a product where you approve the grants? Because you mentioned few things, right? But like, what is that makes you go, I want to invest in them? Because I had a guy, like a client of ours, Roy, he's the founder of Shadow War. They raised $5 million, and that guy personally have raised like $20 million overall, or even more than that. I'm not sure what the exact number was, but he mentioned that fundraising is like dating. So when you're when a girl is deciding to choose a boy, she has checkboxes. Is he tall? Is he nice? Like whatever their criteria is, right? The more check boxes that you tick, the more chances of your being accepted is. So for investors, I think they also have a similar model. So what are the check boxes for you guys, and what are normally the check boxes for grants, right? So founders that are watching can go make sure they tick those check boxes.
Well, a lot of grants programs vary in terms of what their checkboxes are, but some things are similar across the board. So I'll start there. Number one, the dominant themes of the day, some of which we've been mentioning, are a checkbox across basically every grant program. What do I mean by that? One example would be people building decentralized social apps or anything that can be practically considered to be a consumer scale app. Everybody's basically prioritizing that now in different ways. Now, honing in on what we're prioritizing and what we look for, it's less of a technical fit and more of a cultural fit. As you can imagine, I'm sure, and as anyone can imagine, I'm sure that's listening, we get a lot of technical ideas that are similar on that level, but the differentiator is in the person. And when I say cultural fit, I mean what you were saying in the sense of, do they fit with our vision of how we want things to be, how we want builders to be building on our stack, our partners' tech stack, and everything related. Drilling down even further into that, one example would be, let's say two founders come to me with an idea for a new form of WhatsApp. If one of them incorporates not just our push notifications, but something deeper, like using the omni-chain capability of push to allow for all sorts of networks to be there at the same time in that social network, or some kind of really unique spin on membership gated chats that have like 20 different chains all in one app and it all works, that one will win. Someone that, it seems lofty, but it's not as lofty as it seems. Someone that prioritizes omni-chain or all-chain capability plus simplicity in UX, aka a commitment to human-centered design. Those are the top two things for us right now. How can you incorporate several chains at once and yet keep that delicate balance of keeping most of the complexity on the back end away from the user? And how are you using our tech stack to help you do that? So in the simplest possible sense, those two things. How are you abstracting away complexity from the user? How are you using our tech stack to help you do that and to help you scale your idea?
Got it. Does it matter what the founder has done in the past? Like maybe if they're first-time founders, because
It doesn't. Meaning practically, I'll accept them on the same level if they meet certain conditions, and that's fair for everyone. So repeat founder versus first-time founder, you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would believe, how many times, for example, a repeat founder just keeps repeating the same idea that's not working. So that doesn't really work for us. But the first time founder comes to us with exactly what we're looking for, because on a human level, they don't have that confirmation bias or similar bias from just being in a certain box of thinking about how to solve that startup idea. They're stuck in that box sometimes if they've been a repeat founder. And that's something that's delicate to avoid, but should be avoided. Stay away from being stuck in the box of just hitting your head against the same wall over and over again, and get out of that box and try something completely different is my first tip. Get out of the box, try something completely different. Even if people tell you it's not going to work at all, I'll listen.
Got it. Does having an MVP helps? Because what we do at our company is that we work with a lot of founders to help them build the first version of the product sometimes, so they can go raise funding as well. So if two founders come to you and one has an MVP, like a functional prototype or something, and someone who's just an idea, whom would you prefer and invest in?
That's a more cut and dry answer. I would prefer the MVP at first, but that also depends on, I've seen all kinds of aspects of that, whether they're claiming to have, for example, more users, more daily active users than they actually have, or whether they're not and it's actually accurate. Plus, just how simple it is to use, not just like a 2-second demo where it's like, look, click, 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 this is how it works. Let me really see it and really see how simple it is to use as if I'm someone just downloading it from the App Store. Send me a test flight link. Let me go through it myself. And that's way more powerful. So yes, the MVP matters, but we still look even deeper. And I think that's a good thing for everyone involved, because another thing we're dedicated to personally is raising the quality standards of our beautiful space in terms of grants programs.
I have a question for you. Why don't you make the grant process decentralized?
It is basically.
Oh, it is? Okay. How does that
Anyone
work?
can apply. Anyone can apply from anywhere. There's no restrictions on that. In terms of amounts, the amounts have been voted in by the community. So also even like the amounts awarded, they're approved by the whole community. So that's decentralized approval of what's awarded under what conditions. Thirdly, for now, I kind of mentioned that, but I'll get into that again. It's governed, it's led. The whole grants program is led by the community. And how that works on a practical level, there are 3 or 4 reviewers through every stage of the process up to acceptance and achievement of the grant. Those 3 or 4 people are assigned to each grant. And yes, it ends up being a lot of work, but it's a better process for all involved than a super centralized foundation dealing with all of it. I'm radical in that way. I love the decentralized aspect.
Amazing. If I were to summarize what grants, why they're important, and how founders can do it, it's basically, I think it goes both way, right? You guys, companies who are giving grants needs products because they need users to kind of push their stuff, right? Because I mean, and that's no pun intended, because that's your push protocol. But so they need to put their product out there, and the companies, because there are a lot of grants out there, right? They give grants because they get something out of it, and founders get funding to bring their idea into life. So that's the grant. That's why it's important. And then it's like the things that you guys look for, or generally, it's look for, is basically, you don't really care about if they're first time founders, second time founders. Is, from what I can understand, it's like how thoroughly they understand the problem, and how they're leveraging your technology to do it. If they are just using the basic stuff, but they're going ahead, you prefer someone who has an MVP, but you really want to see what actual value does it have. And the whole process is decentralized, where anyone can come and apply. The community was. So there are some aspects that you guys, or the founding team, keeps up there. If I were to
Yeah, the
summarize.
higher degree of centralization, to summarize so everyone's clear, is on purpose. It's the reviewing process. So it's decentralized in the sense that the community still controls the reviewing process, but it's a small group of highly experienced people on purpose to keep quality standards at a certain level, but also because the DAO is really early, so we definitely want to tightly control what comes in and what doesn't.
Amazing, amazing. So I think in this last hour or so, we covered a lot of things. I think you educated me a lot on DAOs, so that's a good thing, because when I got into crypto, I watched a couple of videos, but I stopped at an extent, because I was like, this is not something I want to do, because it's a good concept, but I see a lot of flaws, right? And the main flaws were on decision making, and I'm the kind of person, when he wants to build something, he does not want anyone's opinion. But I think that's just to me. But there can be founders who want everyone's opinion. So I learned a lot about DAO. I learned why it's important. We covered, and actually why it's important for founders um, to leverage this unique technology that we have. And then we covered a lot about fundraising. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to discuss about push protocol, DAOs, fundraising, anything that we can
Yeah,
wrap up the episode with.
look, I love to hear that. I'm glad I could be helpful to you and everyone involved. I love having these conversations. Thank you for having me here and having Push represented here. Some quick final thoughts. One being on the subject of how do you deal with situations like that when you're a founder and you logically feel like, hey, I don't want like anyone deciding this. I have a certain vision for this. Again, that's a question of transparency and lack of structure. You just need more structure if you feel that way. You can have certain structures if you have the right experience with organizational structuring. You can both keep the community happy, keep them involved, and keep your organization on the ideal path at the same time. And on a more practical level, go back to what we said about sub DAOs and work streams and having certain people with certain experiences making certain decisions at all times. As long as you write that all out, how those structures should be, have it proposed and have it voted on, it becomes a rule with the community. So that lessens that worry and makes it easier for founders in that situation. Second, in terms of what's happening with Push, a whole lot. I've seen people wondering what the heck is happening with Push this year. The answer is a lot, and more specifically on a technical level as well as on every other level. You're going to see me, Harsh, Risha, and the rest of the team all over the world more and more as time goes on for a specific reason. We're pivoting from being, as we have been, the middleware of choice for communicating across everywhere in Web3 to more of a hub for all communications in general. What can I say about that now in terms of alpha? Well, we're launching our own nodes this year, validating storage and delivery. As you might surmise, that logically means that those nodes need to be somewhere on a database. That's true. That means a lot of things will be more native, and that's a very good thing. On top of that, we're launching cross-chain requests, which we just had a Spaces about last week. It's posted on CoinMarketCap under Push. It's posted elsewhere. Everyone who's interested in the future of Push should go check that out. So much alpha there in terms of where we're going. But the TLDR is Push is going from 7 to 8 main chains and a bunch of other chains connected in different ways to just about every chain with the help of Wormhole and other partners, aka from sort of cross-chain apps to all-chain apps eventually, which is something we've never really seen before. You put that together with the simplicity I was talking about, the commitment to human-centered design, which we're dedicated to. The sky's really the limit. In other words, to summarize all of that, a whole lot of technical updates are coming to Push this year on every level for everyone involved. Decentralization continues to push forward. And I couldn't be more bullish. I'm not trying to be cliche, but I'm extremely happy to be here and be involved with all of those efforts with Harsh and Risha and the team. And just kind of in closing, anybody who's interested in hearing more, join the DAO, search Push Protocol Forum, and click on the discourse link. As many of you may know or may not know, most crypto communities also live on discourse, and they have forums like old style internet stuff where you can talk about things. Join that forum. You'll learn all kinds of things about what's happening now and what's going to happen. Join our Discord, Push Protocol Discord, and just reach out to any of the core team like myself or Harsh and Risha anytime, and we'll clue you in on anything we can and will. We're very transparent. In other words, we're only building forward with our community. We're believers in the community at Push, and we never, ever give up on the needs of the community. We only double down. Couldn't be more excited to be here. In other words, and we're open. Our doors are open to anyone on all sorts of levels. There's so much coming.
Amazing, amazing. I feel like the first thing that you said, you genuinely want to help people, and I think that's good because from what I've seen, again, I don't know you as a person, but you have an abundant mindset, and that is a really good thing.
I do, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, because I've seen how abundant mindset. I read this book called The Magic of Thinking Big, which I'm sure you might have read as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Amazing. So just to wrap up, I'll add all the links that Ian mentioned in the chat. So if you are a builder or a developer building a product and you want to leverage your technology to get your product out there, I think you can go to their developer documents, or what can they do, Ian, after this podcast if they
That's
are a builder?
another good point. Push.org is the other single source of truth. And yes, go to the docs on push.org. We do own that domain. That is us. Everything's being updated there, including the roadmap and all of these things I'm mentioning on a technical level, like what are nodes? Why does that matter? What are cross-chain requests? What does that enable for builders? And of course, very important for anyone building any kind of app or interested in building with a stack like ours, the SDKs are there on push.org. So definitely look there for SDKs and things like that. Reach out to me even if you have further questions and I can connect you. I'm the guy, in other words, at Push. If you're like, who do I connect to about this really specific question about Push? Just ask Ian and he'll connect you to the right person.
So you push them to the right place.
Yeah, I live by the push, exactly. And just I'll double down on that. Our doors are very open. If you have some question, something that isn't making sense to you, just ask and we'll answer directly. We're living the ethos of being crypto transparent, so to speak.
Amazing. So that all that. And again, like you said, if founders are looking to raise funds, they can also reach out to Ian.
I am the head of grants, so it
Yeah.
is decentralized, but I am one of the reviewers to clarify, so you can always and should reach out to me. I also architected the program with the 3 other people, like how it works and everything else.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ian, for coming on. I wish you the best of luck and excited to see what Push Protocol does. So with that, we'll wrap up the episode. I hope you found this conversation as insightful and as inspiring as I did. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.